From the Fathead Studio in Speedway, Indiana, this is The Skinny.
Man, am I still pretty? And he's like, you ain't pretty, but you're going to be all right.
And now I'm just hanging on, looking at the wall, like flying this way. And I'm like, oh man, I got to let go of this thing at some point.
And then there's one that could literally pick you up.
Yeah.
It's
I'm not really sure about that, but yeah.
That's called a helicopter.
Well,
And the last lap was just chaos. I mean, like 4 wide, 5 wide.
It's like whatever, if you land it and send it into the fence, you're probably not gonna get hurt. Bounce, and then this insane roll, the car that Keegan was in. I mean, I don't know it's the shape of the Beetle or what, but that thing sent it.
So I was the supercharger specialist on my old man's car with
Specialist?
Yeah, it sounds cooler than crew guy.
Hi, I'm Tony Stewart.
I'm Mario Andretti.
I'm Christy Lee.
I'm Alexander Rossi.
I'm Cruz Pedregon.
I'm Travis Pastrana, and you're watching The Skinny.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to The Skinny. I'm Ken Stout. Rico Elmore has joined me here on the set. We have the track dude, as always, back behind running the controls, Mr. Michael Young. And a very special guest, once again, has joined us here on the show. It's always exciting when he's here. He is certainly one of the best, certainly known worldwide as well. If you look him up in Wikipedia, it says he's an American professional motorsports competitor and stunt performer. I promise you, this guy's resume is absolutely second to none. He's a great spokesman. He's a great ambassador for motorsports. He's always got a smile on his face. And this particular time, he does not have a colostomy bag. So we're excited to see him sitting on the couch in good health. Welcome to the show here, Mr. Travis Pastrana.
Oh, well, thank you very much. That was a heck of an intro. And yes, good to be on this time without any tubes or wires or anything sticking out. So yes, always nice to be standing.
So no base jumping lately.
No, that was my last base jump, maybe ever. I mean, maybe a bridge over water, if something collapses or you crash, you'll be all right.
Isn't that what you told your wife before that one?
Exactly. That was pretty much to a T. Oh, perfectly safe. And I called her from the ambulance. I'm like, yeah, so I'm good. I'm bleeding out. I definitely have something broken, probably my back, but I'll be fine. So yeah, she was not thrilled.
Just get the ramps installed at the house. I'll be home soon.
I didn't even think about that. You probably do have pre-made ramps, right, for the wheelchairs at the house?
Yeah, I mean, sadly, even my mom, like when I turned 16, I bought some land, and then 17, I built a shop on it, and 18, I got my house, but I was still I was still a kid. And my mom kind of designed her dream house, really, but it was technically my house. And she designed it so it had a potential, like an elevator. She's like, I don't know. There's a lot of people that get really badly hurt in motorcycles. I just want to make sure you're. I was like, thanks for looking out, Mom. What are you thinking?
There's a lot of people. She didn't say you.
Yeah. I mean, there's an average.
The chances are, I know you.
Chances are you're going to need an elevator in this house at some point. But we never needed it so far, knock on wood. So thanks, Mom, though, for looking out.
That's great stuff. When I was doing a little bit of homework, as always, here to prepare for you, and notice that your wife is a professional skateboarder. Does she still do that at all? I mean, it only makes sense. Is that how you guys met?
Yeah, well, actually, on Nitro Circus, women are pretty much unicorns. So everyone says, why don't you have more girls on the show? I'm like, well, the problem is the bare minimum is you have to do the biggest jumps in action sport. So just to jump the jumps, I'm not even talking doing tricks or anything. There was one skateboarder in the world. There were 2 bicyclists, and there were probably a handful of women freestyle motocross, or not just women motorcycle riders. So we were trying to get as many as possible, and pretty much everyone that could do it said, hell no, I'm not traveling with a bunch of circus clowns around doing tricks and trying to kill myself every night, except for Lindsay. She was 3-time X Games gold medalist. She was world champion at the time, and she's like, I'll come hit that ramp. And she hit it on bicycles. And then when Jolene got hurt, she tried backflips on dirt bikes without having any motorcycle experience. And yeah, pretty much she won me over right away. Never jumped a gap jump that big with people in the back who didn't have seatbelts. This all sounds really bad, actually.
Want to get The Skinny on other guests and different types of motorsports? Check out our YouTube page and get The Skinny. The Skinny is brought to you by Fatheads Eyewear. Fatheads Eyewear, hardcore since '04. and American coach. Innovation is our life force.
Welcome back to the Skinny. It's absolutely a gorgeous day here in Speedway, Indiana. This is the Fatheads Eyewear Studios. I'm Ken Stout. That's Rico Elmore. And the track dude is running the controls. We have Travis Pastrana on the show with us this week. Always exciting to have him on here.
When was the limo jump? The Connor limo jump with Jim?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're allowed to talk about that. I don't know, because Connor was kind of mid-season. He was getting ready for the Indy 500, and I don't know why he came out.
I don't know what Connor you're talking about, but yeah,
exactly. No one knows this Connor that may or may not have led a bunch of laps at Indy that year. He had the best performance ever. We're good. So I wasn't allowed to drive the vehicle, in theory, just because of Subaru and whatever, and I didn't feel confident letting anyone else. And Connor was over. I'm like, Connor, you can drive. And Connor goes, no, I'll jump in the limo. And let me break this down one step forward or back. Pit Viper came over, one of the glasses company, and they said, hey, we want to do a stunt with Twisted Tea. And we're like, okay, we want to do a driving stunt. I'm like, well, we can't really, none of this makes sense, but how about we fill a limo full of water? So we put like plastic wrap, basically a tarp, in a limo, filled it up full of water, and I'm like, we'll jump a jump with it. So then at least the people in the back of a limo, in theory, could be drinking. I don't know. So they said no drinking at all during anything driving. But yes, we would like that stunt. So Connor, who we brought out to drive, decided he didn't feel comfortable driving the limo as it was weighted down, and he had never jumped a gap jump that big with people in the back who didn't have seatbelts. This all sounds really bad, actually. But yeah, anyway, it worked out great. We jumped the limo, and we had a lot of fun.
So
now that you're diagramming it that way, I mean, what could go wrong here?
I mean, honestly, you're saying that the entire time, and all I can picture are the people in the back flying completely out of the car. Did they stay in the car?
Yeah, I mean, the water actually, it looked like one of those Matrix things where it was like the water all kind of like came up in like little water balls, if you will, all around this Connor character that was in the back with another Jim York person. And so they floated about 6 inches out of the seat, but the water kind of held them in, and then it just smashed down. And the limo was great because it bent in the middle and in the front, the frame, because it was so much weight. So it was like suspension. It was perfect.
Yeah, I think it's a new suspension they call breakaway. Yeah. Because it breaks away half of the car in the middle and then it snaps the other half in the front. But yeah, Connor told me that he was holding on to the tarp. That was his safety. Holding on to the tarp as it hit the jump. I said, you're an idiot. What are you doing?
So it brings up a good question, because we see you do these stunts. I mean, and they're just endless, right? And we wonder how you come up with the ideas. But how many people come at you guys and say, we want to do whatever it may be? Is that like a weekly occurrence?
It definitely is. And what's really interesting about my house, that everyone calls it Pastrana Land, we've got the newest innovations for Nitro Circus with all the bag jumps, like the airbag stuff and the technologies and the ramps. And we can weld and build everything on venue, basically at the house. So whatever we need to do, whether it's building a landing or a mulch pile or an airbag or welding a ramp together or building whatever we need, we have access to do, or fixing a vehicle, we can do it there. So people come to Pastrana Land to do a world record jump, whether that's a triple front flip on a BMX bike or a triple backflip on a motorcycle or whatever it may be. And they do it at my house first. And then they take it somewhere else and do it as a world's first, because for whatever reason, when someone does something at my house, everyone thinks of it as this like video game cartoon character kind of place that nothing's real there. So it really devalues every new stunt that's being done. Like I'll do something and I'll be like, I'm old. I don't ride that often, but I'll work on a ramp and a landing. And I'm like, hey guys, try this. And you got the best guys in the world who are way better than me at everything at the moment. And they're like, well, we can't, like, that's impossible. I'm like, it's not impossible. I already did it. They're like, well, that's you there. The gravity, physics don't apply.
That's you.
You're not a human.
It's been a catch-22 with the success we've had there.
Exciting stuff for sure. Once again, Travis Pastrana on the show with us here this week. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, he said competition fuels everything. We're going to dive into it a little bit deeper.
And I was like, kind of middle finger in the air. I'm like, slow up. Like, what are you talking about? So I basically told him, I said, yeah, here's $1. I want your dollar signed right there. And I want you to frame it when I backflip and still beat you.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to The Skinny. We have Travis Pastrana on the show, loaded with energy, as one might expect. Endless stories. He's absolutely a superstar. Great to have him take some time out and join us here on the show. Hey, man, I'm going to take you back. 2016, apparently an interview where you said, I always wanted to make a living riding dirt bikes. Then you said, I enjoy the racing. I enjoy hating other competitors. I enjoy convincing myself that they beat my grandma up, and I'm going to knock them down, and I'm going to win the race.
Where do you get these quotes?
I don't care if that's true or false. I love it.
Yeah, it's a great. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. To some extent, yes.
Okay, so maybe it could be real.
So think about this. You have freestyle motocross, which was really strange for me. Like growing up, my dad was a drill sergeant in the Marine Corps. A lot of military around here. A lot of my uncle was quarterback for the Denver Broncos for 2 years. Like very, very competitive, sports-minded family. Work hard, play hard, but never give up and that kind of stuff. Like basically win at all costs, I guess is the shortest version of that. And then I got to X Games, and I'm using that same mentality of win at all costs. Like, how can I beat my competitors? And then you got Brian Deegan, Metal Militia, World Domination, kind of the opposite of me, who I'd expected to like hate me. And I'm 15 years old, and he comes in and I finish, and he like high fives. He's practically giving me a hug. He's like, "That's so cool! Like, how do you do this?" And yeah, let's come on out to the compound, and we're gonna ride together. And I'm thinking, all right, what's he playing at? Like, this is definitely like a mind game. He's just trying to mess with me. But having said that, I really found that camaraderie to be awesome. And when I felt really alone in racing, freestyle was that place that you went with your friends to try to push the boundaries of the human spirit. Like, it was just really this fun energy. And that's kind of why, at like 19, 20 years old, after just being beat down in the racing world in motocross and being hurt all the time, I just wanted to spend time with my friends. And at Nitro Circus, we get to travel the world doing exactly what we wanted to do with all our best friends and now family,
I wanted to go back when you were talking about racing. Where was it that you did the backflip, and who were you racing, and what was that whole deal? Because you almost got beat, and I know I've asked you this before, but I can't remember.
So the only race that I'm thinking of, so it was a qualifier race, and I almost got thrown out of the AMA. So I jumped back in. I had been hurt for a while and done freestyle, and actually started racing rally for a full season. And then I came back in 2005, I believe, maybe it's 2006, right around there, to race a one-off race at Daytona. And I did a backflip, but I had arm pump pretty bad. So I did a backflip across the finish line, but my hands basically blew off the handlebars. I didn't get a good pull at all. Daytona's pretty soft, sand on that infield. And I came up short and ended up doing like backflip, caught the front tire and flipped forwards, almost landed back on the wheels from a front flip. But the race, technically, even though that I had crossed the finish line, everybody else that was racing now couldn't do the finish line jump because the medic flag was out, or the yellow caution flag, which no one's allowed to pass on. So all the guys coming up to the finish line that were like, trying to go across the finish line and battle for their position couldn't. The AMA is like, look, if you want to do freestyle, you go to the X Games. If you want to be a serious athlete, you come here. And even though your race is finished, doesn't mean everyone else's is. So, yeah, I can understand the point.
That clearly wasn't what I was talking about, but that's way better than the one I was thinking of.
Well, so I'm curious, are you thinking of whenever he jumped over the guy, was that the Donations race?
No, they were running side by side, and it was
yeah. So, yeah, I did lose that race. Red Bull Straight Rhythm. Well, I had a dollar bet. So again, I had been out for a while. I'm pretty old now. This is a couple years ago. I was mid-30s, and the arena cross champion, Tyler Bowers, was racing a 500. And I was like, dude, I want to race a 500. So Red Bull's like, we'll have a 500 class. So we go to the final with like Tyler Bowers and I, and everyone's joking. They're all like, oh, well, we should make this a show for the fans. So Tyler, you should just slow up. And I was like, kind of middle finger in the air. I'm like, slow up. Like, what are you talking about? So I basically told him, I said, yeah, here's $1. I want your dollar signed right there. And I want you to frame it when I backflip and still beat you. And yeah, he got me on the third and final race when I backflipped. So a little disappointing, but hey, I put on it was a good effort.
So the question is, if you didn't do the backflip, would you have beat him?
No, probably not. I didn't lose. It was actually faster to do the backflip for me. So it was a vertical wall, so everyone was trying to figure out how to get the front end down. I just hit it pretty much wide open, leaned back, and the front end was automatically down as it came around. So, yeah.
Dude, that straight rhythm competition is like no other. So exciting to watch those guys battle through those whoops at speed. It's incredible stuff for sure. Hey, we've got Travis Pastrana on the show with us once again. As you can see, the stories are endless, and one is better than the next. Don't even think about going anywhere. We'll be right back.
Flying like Superman, 40 feet off the ground, going about 75 mile an hour. And I remember very vividly giggling to myself. I'm like, wow, this is kind of cool.
Welcome back to The Skinny. We have Mr. Travis Pastrana on the show with us here today, joining us from his home in Annapolis, Maryland. Beautiful place out there, as he's already documented. I saw a quick clip. I think it was fairly recent. You were giving somebody a ride around what is a very narrow path inside of your Can-Am, and the person on the right-hand side was having a great time, but I'm telling you that the trees are not far away when you're at speed.
I feel like for as many crashes as I've been in and as much has been documented, there are an inordinate amount of people that will voluntarily get in to the Can-Am next to me, and they like line up. We were just talking about doing something for Memorial Day where we always get some veterans out there, and these guys, a lot of them, they're missing limbs already, and they get in, they're like, let's go. I'm like, all right, man, all right, well, we'll try not to hurt you any further, but no, I actually, the only times that I crash are when someone's better. So in my backyard, on my track, in my Can-Am, I haven't had really any crashes back there. I did one when I was filming, and it got put on two wheels and I saved it, but I ended up going into a tree. But it was probably because I had night vision goggles on, and I feel like my depth perception was a little off. But that's a different story. So for the most part,
I mean,
as
what
long
could go
as
wrong?
no one's faster, I feel like I'm pretty safe.
It's funny that you went in that direction right off the bat, because I was thinking the entire time I was watching the video, there is no way on God's green earth I'd climb in that car with him, because if something bad goes wrong, he's going to survive and I won't.
Or they're going to talk about you both perishing, and it'll be superstar Travis Pastrana and some other guy.
That's true.
Some other guy that was,
Michael?
Yeah, I just had you're talking about all these crashes that you've had, Travis. And I always envision you always thinking about what's going on, and you're always trying to figure a way to manipulate or get around a track, a course, whatever. Has there ever been like an oh no moment where you're like, this isn't going to end as well as I had hoped it was going to?
Story of my life. No, I think the scariest crash there's two moments that come to mind. One, I was parachuting into the Grand Canyon, and I wanted to try a trick, a backflip 360, which ended up landing eventually. But I was like, oh, this is perfect, because I'll just do it into the Grand Canyon, and then if it goes wrong, I can just skydive basically away from the motorcycle. So I did a backflip and a 360, and it actually worked way better than expected. So I jumped off the motorcycle, I did another front flip, and while I was upside down, I saw what I thought was the motorcycle over my head, but it was a helicopter that was kind of following us, that was filming. So I looked backwards to make sure that I didn't open the parachute and the motorcycle was still above me. And by the time I looked back to the ground, I was about a second away from hitting it. So I threw the parachute, And that second, I swear it was 30 seconds. And there's nothing that you can do once you throw the pilot chute. And I'm just watching the ground, and I'm like, I'm not slowing down. I'm not slowing down. I'm sure it all happened really quick. But in my head, I'm just like, and this is where I die. And this is where I die. And it just opened enough. And it was the ironic part was someone goes, I think could have been my wife at the time. Maybe it was my mom. I was back a little bit earlier. But some smart woman was there. And they said, you should wear a helmet. And I'm like, this is kind of a pass or fail situation. Like, a helmet's not going to do any good. And there I was, tumbling down the side of the Grand Canyon through a cactus field, thinking, man, I really should have worn a helmet. Ended up breaking my foot, had a cactus all in my butt, and I was wearing shorts and a T-shirt. Yep.
Attaboy.
And I think the other moment, if you got 2 seconds, I hit a jump that was about 200 foot up a hill. And right as I took off, I got bucked kind of over the bars, and I jumped off the bike. And I had about 4 seconds before I hit the ground. And I had all this panic and horror and terror, and I thought, I'm going to die. And then, time slows down, and there I am, flying like Superman, 40 feet off the ground, going about 75 mile an hour. And I remember very vividly giggling to myself. I'm like, wow, this is kind of cool. And then I hit the ground and blew up my knee and broke everything, and it really sucked. But yeah, it was that moment of like, from sheer terror to, well, nothing I can do now.
Enjoy it while I can.
Yeah. Man, this was really cool. Did you see the video? It was really cool for a minute.
Man, the stories are absolutely incredible. Hey, man, as you might imagine, whenever you are in the line of work that this guy is in, you do get a fair amount of injuries. When we come back in the next segment, we're going to ask him about a couple of them. You'd be amazed.
And then I passed out. And I've already experienced the most amount of pain that my brain will let me experience. So it's probably a really bad learning experience for me. That it's like, well, that was livable.
The Skinny is brought to you by American Coach. American Coach, innovation is our life force. And Fatheads Eyewear. Fatheads Eyewear, hardcore since '04.
Welcome back to The Skinny. We're here in Speedway, Indiana. This is the Fatheads Eyewear studio, and Mr. Travis Pastrana's on the show with us. If you've been following along here so far, the stories are incredible. His talents are absolutely astonishing. What he's been able to do and stay alive is even more astonishing. But whenever you go through this, as he's already documented, sometimes things don't go to plan. And man, you've had a couple of big ones. We talked about it right off the top of the show because a year ago when we had you on here, you had a big moment there, and you were on the couch hurting pretty bad. But I want to go back to one that still amazes me whenever I read about it, and it was when your spine was separated from your pelvis. You were in and out of consciousness, if I'm correct here, for 2 or 3 days. And, of course, the doctors really didn't think that you would live. I think you're one of a couple that have ever survived that injury. Is that correct?
Yeah, so dislocated both SI joints. Usually when that happens, you bleed out. So I bled 2/3 of my blood volume over that course of the next week, basically. So what I learned from that crash, though, was really interesting. Like I said, I just turned 15 years old, didn't go fast enough, came up short on a jump. And I didn't hit my head, but I passed out. And then I'd wake up and I'd pass out. And I'd wake up and I passed out. And by the time I finally woke up for good, I was in a different state. And it was basically 2 weeks later. And I learned that I can only take a certain amount of pain before your body just says nope. So there's other people that are probably tougher than I am that can take more. But I don't really have that much to be afraid of because I can only tolerate so much pain. And then I pass out. And I've already experienced the most amount of pain that my brain will let me experience. So it's probably a really bad learning experience for me. That it's like, well, that was livable. I don't want to do it again, but yeah, that was all right.
So what you're saying is you're okay. You can tolerate it. Is that what you're saying?
Or tolerate it or not tolerate it, depending on how you look at it. But everyone's always so worried about getting hurt. I'm worried about the unknown. Like, I think the scariest thing is to not know if you're going to hurt, what's going to hurt, how long you're going to be out, what you're going to miss as far as the next races or whatnot. But for me, the pain part, since that event, event since not going fast enough and basically shattering my pelvis and almost bleeding out and everything else. I realized that I can only take a certain amount of pain, and I've already experienced it.
But wasn't that when you made the call to Lindsay to let her know that I'm okay, but I'm in the back of the ambulance and I'm headed to the.
That was just this year. Ironically, they said so. I tore the urethra and shattered the pelvis again, but they said with all of my back being fused, it actually probably saved me again from bleeding out, just because like a lot of the hips and stuff when they start breaking. Like everything normally breaks or moves but with me, my heal time was actually about a quarter of the amount of time too, because with everything fused in, they didn't have to put so many rods in. They didn't have to worry about so much stuff healing. The whole back of my spine is basically one big, you can see it when I walk. It looks like I'm, I don't know, not very,
not normal.
Yeah, not normal.
Not sure what the word is here.
Yeah, I don't know either. Sorry. If you think of the adjective, let me know. But at the end of the day, I was back driving 2 months after. I still had a bag and, I still had tubes and stuff, but they said I was physically stable, which was good enough for me, I guess. But if I didn't have that, it would have been a 6-month recovery. So really last year and being able to compete in the whole Nitro Rallycross Championship and the ARA Championship and to win the World UIM Boat Championship, I would have missed all of that had I have not shattered my pelvis and had my whole back basically fused together years ago. So, it was always positive.
Yeah, there you go. You got to look at the cup as half full, right?
Yeah,
I took care of that problem years ago.
He was looking ahead. He was like, I might as well get this fused up right now. There's going to be something else that happens.
So let me ask you a question. The initial time whenever that happened, was that the accident where they took x-rays and everything looked normal to them and they wanted to stand you up and your mom stopped them and said, no, don't do that. There's clearly something wrong here?
So what was really interesting was when I was laying down, the spine was kind of in the right spot, but basically all it was the ligaments and everything that attaches, basically holds your spine to your hips or to your pelvis, for lack of a better term. They saw there's a bunch of breaks in the pelvis, but it's such a rare injury to have. And I looked like Santa Claus, I just had a huge gut. So they're like, he's bleeding out, but we can't really, internally, but we can't figure out where it's coming from because everything looks somewhat normal. They weren't like standing me up, but they were basically saying, hey, look, you've got a shattered pelvis or pelvis, but you should be okay. What they didn't realize was that all the ligaments and everything in my whole spine were basically completely ripped in half. So that every time that I did move, there was nothing holding the upper half of my body to the bottom half of my body.
Unbelievable injury. And just help me confirm one last thing, and we'll change subjects here. But that jump that you didn't clear, was that the same jump that your father told you not to hit?
That's, there's been really sound advice on almost every one of my injuries. And every time I'm like, no, I totally got this. Yeah, so that was right. Just shy of sunk the boat. Like, it's supposed to be a waterproof cockpit, but it went from 120 to 10 miles an hour.
Once again, welcome back to the Skinny. I'm Ken Stout. That's Rico Elmore, Michael Young behind the controls, and we have the exciting Mr. Travis Pastrana on the show with us here today. He mentioned in that previous segment that they won a championship in the UIM offshore boat racing. Did it in 2020, a slightly smaller schedule, certainly helped him hone his craft. 2022 grabbed the championship in the Husky Chocolate team. Let's touch on these boats because, much to my surprise, they're basically spec. It's a spec series, if you will. 47-foot long Miss Geico at the time in 2020. It's a catamaran made of carbon and Kevlar. High performance, of course, 170 miles an hour. They weigh in at a hefty 11,750 pounds, twin 1,100 horsepower race engines. The props are the same. The boats are all the same, if I understood this correctly, Travis. And it really brings it back to setup, driver, and throttle man. Is that correct?
It is the NASCAR, if you will, of boat racing. Every course is a little bit different. So kind of like NASCAR, where you got your short tracks and There's some tracks like St. Pete was our best by far. It was a flat water event. So the flatter the water, the more the driver plays into it, just really hitting your marks. You can adjust prop size. So you can adjust, and you got your throttleman does most of the work. So when it's rough, the throttleman's 90%. But when it's smooth, every boat team will be within 2 seconds on a 10-mile course. So it really comes down to not only the setup with the team, which, Team Husky Chocolate this last year was spot on. And they did such a great job. And Throttleman Steve Curtis is like 11-time world champion. The guy's phenomenal. So I did set myself up definitely to succeed there. But when it came down to a flat water event where the driver is key, we absolutely tore them up. And I think a lot of that just has the wheel time. These guys don't get as much seat time, even though they're a lot more experienced in boats. Once you kind of figure out that, for me, my job was to not flip the boat, which I know that sounds counterintuitive. Why anyone want me there in the seat? but it's also, just to keep the motor, as high in the RPMs. Like you talk to Crafton, like a lot of times he'll be wide open around the track, and he was always telling me in the trucks, I'm like, I was wide open for qualifying. How am I, P18 and you're P2 and you lifted? He's like, well, you got to get it to come off the corner where it's getting the RPMs the quickest. So even if that requires a little bit of lift, so you have less wheel into it, that's that kind of technique that I had to use in the boats. And I learned that really quick to keep the sound of the motor, even if you're using a little bit more racetrack, if you will, it seemed to really help out. And we just absolutely figured out those flat water races. And I actually thank Matt Crafton a lot for all the help, and even Scott Speed for all the help they gave me on pavement, which is completely opposite of what you think. But I can understand how a boat works and the waves and the jumps and how I want to hit that stuff. But I feel like my advantage over the other boat drivers was definitely kind of the pavement kind of racing.
Did you have any mishaps in the boat to speak of?
The one mishap that I had, we were getting our butts kicked, and it was so rough. So we had prepared for basically a smooth water race, and the winds kicked up, and it was a lake race. We were out at up in Michigan City, and all of a sudden in lakes it's super choppy. So like offshore, you might be kind of bouncing like a whoop section from wave to wave, and you can keep somewhere around 140, 150 mile an hour, just kind of hopping through 8-10 foot rollers. But this lake race, it was like a whoop section. And every now and then you just catch a flyer, like the front end, on a dirt bike when your back tire misses a whoop or your front tire misses a whoop and you dive into one. And we just go flying. The guy that got third actually ripped the back half of the boat off. They were probably, 20 feet in the air. It was ridiculous. And these things are just sails. And I was scared the crap out of me. And we're getting beat by the Australian Navy actually has a boat, believe it or not. And they were kicking our butts. And I knew we had to get back to the inside of them. And we had one chance to beat them. And Steve Curtis, my throttleman, goes, if you do that, we'll flip. I'm like, I'm going to the inside. Felt like I was like, you're telling Harry. I'm like, I'm dropping the hammer, Harry. Cold
Don't you drop the hammer.
So he's got the throttle, and he's keeping our throttle down so we can go wider on the outside. But I'm like, if we don't get to the inside of him on the back straightaway, we're done. Our race is over. And I told him 3 times, I said, I'm going to the inside. And he didn't lift, thinking that if he didn't lift, I would just naturally not turn.
Go to the inside.
And he didn't lift. I turned it inside of that 222 Navy boat, and it caught the side, and we were flying through the air. I'd never thrown a whip like that on a dirt bike. 120 mile an hour, full. Lock. And luckily, the prop or basically the rudder still caught just enough, and we just got just shy of sunk the boat. Like, it's supposed to be a waterproof cockpit, but it went from 120 to 10 miles an hour and just stopped. And poor Steve Curtis, he's not fragile, but he's not a young buck anymore. And he didn't talk to me the rest of that probably that weekend. He was done. He was just shaking his head. I was like, we could have had it. Just nothing. We made back up for it the next week, but we still got second that race. It was fine.
So clearly he's the throttle man and you were steering, and I think that was typically the way it went. But I want to say I watched a video here just recently, like a few months ago, where they switched positions, and what in the God's name they were thinking to let you run the throttles is beyond me, but I'm pretty sure you were running the throttles and the guy that was steering was really scared and you were saying, "It's okay, man. We got this. We got this."
All right, so let me go back to the beginning of this. So I'm racing. We won the world championships in the top class. Like basically, if you're like in off-road, we won the the Mint 400 in the trophy truck class, or the Baja 1000 in the trophy truck class. And then I went and I bought a Can-Am with kind of that same mentality of like we have a trophy truck, which a Can-Am's awesome, but it's not a trophy truck when you hit the big waves. And so this vehicle that we're talking about is it's like 26 foot long, 600 horsepower. It goes okay, but it's not like a super quick boat by any stretch of the imagination. But it's like running a go-kart on an off-road track or a Can-Am across the biggest whoop section in the Baja you've ever seen. And the only guy that will really get in with me as the driver, with me being a throttleman, not understanding anything about how to throttle, was Jim York, same guy that was in the back of the limo. Now, he's from Salt Lake City, Utah, and he had never driven a boat before we entered the championship last year. And we go out, and we were usually about last or close to last. But for their national championships, their one race, there was basically a monsoon that was coming in, or like a hurricane off the shore of Florida. And the waves were so big that almost every other boat rolled or flipped or broke or stopped. And we ended up second in the national championships this year on sheer dumb luck. Dude, we submarined the thing 3 times. And he's yelling. But I was like, right before the race, Jim goes, "All right, this time we're not going to be last." He goes, "This is national championships. I don't care if we flip it. Let's go. I don't care if I scream, we're in." And so he started screaming, and I just yelled, my favorite quote from Grandma's Boy. Said, "You're in my house," or no, Happy Gilmore. I said, "You're in my house now, Grandma." And then he cried a little bit. And we got second. You'll have to see it to believe it. It's the redneck jamboree, if you will. This is going to be so much fun.
Want to get the skinny on other guests and different types of motorsports? Check out our YouTube page and get the skinny. The Skinny is brought to you by Fatheads Eyewear. Fatheads Eyewear, hardcore since '04. And American Coach. American Coach, innovation is our life force.
Boy, if you've missed the beginning of this show, make sure you go back, find it online, and watch this one. Travis Pastrana is absolutely second to none. It's been a great time having him here on The Skinny. Hope you've enjoyed it so far. One last segment, man. Again, thanks for taking the time here, but I want to congratulate you, by the way, on your run at Daytona. Finishing 11th. I mean, you had a shot there, top 5, certainly top 10 before the mayhem hit on that last lap. And to watch you learn how to play that draft game and run inside with those guys that are the absolute best in the world at it is absolutely astonishing, man. I thought you did a fabulous job.
Oh, no, thanks a lot. And Jason Hedleski, my spotter, was absolutely amazing. Crafton spotter. He's actually spotted for me there. I think when we got top 10 there in the nationwide. So, I mean, we've led some laps at Talladega and Daytona as well. I actually got to follow Tony Stewart the whole race in my first ever race there, and got caught up when there was a car that ended up going. Kyle Larson got into the stands a bit and had to go across the grass, but ended up 10th backwards in that nationwide debut. But what was really cool, and this whole thing, to go back to the beginning, Denny Hamlin said, if you play your cards right, you got to get a little bit lucky, but we'll give you a car that is good enough to qualify on time. He goes, if you don't qualify on time, if you mess up, if anything happens, you don't get through the gears because it's your first time ever driving a cup car and you're in the Daytona 500 against guys like Jimmy Johnson and Connor Daly and truck champion. It's a pretty stacked field going for those last 4 spots. He goes, we've got the whole Toyota team to help you, but in return, there's not a lot of Toyotas on that track. He goes, a restrictor plate race is the one race that I feel like you might not be last because you are going to be behind either myself, the 23, or Tyler Reddick on this last green-white checkered. And everybody laughed at Denny. They said, absolutely not. There's no way that I'm going to be able to qualify, one. that I'm going to be of any use to any of the Toyotas, and that I'm going to make 2311 look like a team that anyone wants to be a part of, because I'm not going to be good enough to get the car there. And sure as I think I laughed when I looked up, last green, white checkered, and it's it's Denny, Bubba, and me. And my car did best on the top. And Denny goes to the bottom, and he's like, "Hey, I'm going to break these guys apart down bottom. Get on Bubba." And we took off. I didn't have the greatest start, and unfortunately kind of left Bubba on his own. He drops in, gets a hold of Kyle, and all of a sudden, Kyle pushes Logano way out in front, drops back to Bubba. They slow down. I'm coming off a 2 on the last lap. I thought, if I get on the 23 right as we're coming out of this corner and I can hook up, they're already connected. If I can get right up and connect, I'm like, we're 3 connected going down the back straightaway. You got Denny that's breaking up the whole inside line. Like, we can probably, as a 3-car draft, we can probably hold it wide open. We'll get right up against that wall. If we can get past Logano, I'm like, we're going to come out 1, 2, 3 on the back stretch out of 4. All I have to do is exactly what Denny told me and get on the 23 coming off a 2. And right as I smiled and thought, this is going to be awesome, I didn't check my rearview mirror. And right as when a car gets about a half car length behind you, you get super loose. And all I was thinking of was get to the 23. And Eric came up from behind me, and he did everything perfect, but he saw the same thing I did and thought, if we can be 4 cars locked up coming off a 2, we're going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, and then they're going to be doing their dance up here, and I'm going to come in and get the win. So, I'm sure that the whole bottom row had their story about what was going to happen, and Larson was in the middle, but he had his story on what was going to happen. But for a brief moment, I thought there was a chance that I was going to push Bubba to the win and that we were going to get second. And man, I went from just about getting a Christmas card from Bubba, the 2311 team for life, to then taking out Larson and Bubba and Denny and half the rest of the field. And I'm not getting Christmas cards from anybody. So, yeah, that's going to be my last restrictor plate race. But, God, it was a good time.
Hey, man, we're almost out of time here. Quickly, tell us what's in store for 2023 and Travis Pastrana.
Well, 2023, we had some investors come in. And it's actually all the guys that they just sold UFC. Dana White and Lorenzo, or the Fertitta brothers, Lorenzo Fertitta, sold the UFC for $4 billion. They also worked with some stuff with Thrill One and Rob Dyrdek, and they just sold that off. And their focus right now is to make Nitro Rallycross a sport like they built from the ground up with the UFC. And I'm basically taking a little step back as a driver. I'll still be doing the Can-Am races. I'll still be having fun, but I'm going to be doing all the testing. We're going to be actually doing a lot of recruiting. I was just talking to Noah Gregson today and talking to Jimmy and anybody that I can, really, and trying to get some teams. Honestly, even Tony Stewart might be interested in coming in and trying to get some of these teams, some of these drivers, some of these up-and-coming racers, and really helping not only build our sport, but hoping that the next generation of action sports stars kind of start following these NASCAR drivers. And if we can build them up on their off weekends doing the fun kind of shenanigan jump, crazy 1,000 horsepower, all-wheel drive drift cars, those fans hopefully will go to NASCAR, and hopefully some of the NASCAR fans will come watch what we got going. So my main goal for this next year is to build the most insane tracks on the face of the earth. And we're starting in June with the first track that I've actually been able to build from the ground up in Oklahoma, Mid-America Outdoors. We got Dennis Anderson, and all the Andersons are setting all kinds of world record monster truck jumps. We've got the Nitro Circus. They put $1.2 million into a freestyle setup that's going to absolutely, you'll have to see it to believe it. It's the redneck jamboree, if you will. This is going to be so much fun, and just really excited to not take a step back from racing, but hopefully help build this sport to where I think it can be.
Yeah, Jason Robinette and the gang out there at Mid-America Outdoors is absolutely second to none. Yeah. It's just a super guy, and I saw some renderings of that track. It's going to be pretty exciting for the fans at home for sure, and the drivers.
Very.
Great stuff, man. We love having you on the show, man. I just can't thank you enough for taking the time out and spending some time with us, and I know the fans will enjoy it as well. Rico, thanks for digging in and helping get this guy on the show. So, once again, Travis Pastrana, ladies and gentlemen, keep your eyes on him. Great stuff coming this way, your way in 2023, and now you know a little bit more of the Skinny on this fabulous young man.